Welcome to FrihetsNytt with me, the editor-in-chief, Victor Eriksson. It's not every day that you get to have a non-Swedish speaker as a guest here at the studio, but today we have it. And it's none other than Harry Miller from Britain, from Lincoln even, who's come here just for this interview, among other things. So warm welcome to you, Harry, for being here.
Thank you very much for having me. It's nice to be here.
We'll be talking a lot about the police system in Britain and also Harry's own background as a former police officer. But I suppose that some of you that are watching this are British and are not used to what we send here on the FrihetsNytt. But the thing you see here is a pillory. It's symbolical, not historical. No one has been really in place there. But we have this series called Skamstocken, or the pillory, where we put people in power that has played a great role in destroying Sweden by forced mass migration, attacks on our central freedom, refusing the Swedes' sovereignty against the European Union, NATO and everything. And what we do, we don't attack them, we don't threaten them or anything, it's just symbolically that they should stand there and be ashamed of themselves. And we quote what they've said, we quote what they've written, and we tell the people, the viewers, what they have done. So now you know what the thing is standing here in the background. But we're not going to talk about medieval punishment now today, Harry. We're going to talk about you. You're a former police officer, the founder of the organization Fair Cop, and also a very good good man in general.
Thank you.
But could you please give us a quick background of yourself? Who is Harry Miller?
Okay, so I was technically a police officer, but that was a long time ago. What's interesting is that I was a businessman for many years. I unloaded ships at the port of Immingham. I employed around about 100 people. So I was busy doing that, being quite successful in my own small way. And it was in 2019 that the police turned up at my place of work because they'd received a report from somebody who was entirely not connected with me, somebody from the other side of the country, who'd seen my Twitter feed. And on my Twitter feed, I was Harry the Owl. And they'd seen my Twitter feed and they'd realised that I was making comments about trans ideology. I'd said things like, trans women are men, because they are.
The horror.
Yeah, I'd said things like, Sheffield women know the difference between lads and lasses, because they do. Things which I never attacked anybody, I didn't single anybody out for special treatment, I didn't threaten anybody. I simply joined in what was a lively national conversation. And what's interesting is, in 2019, the government invited the public to comment. They wanted to hear what the public had to say about trans rights issues, because there was a move by certain sections of the LGBTQ community that wanted to progress trans rights. And so the government, being aware that this was going to be controversial, they invited people to talk about it. So we were talking about it. What we hadn't realised was that there were some very motivated trans activists who were in league with the police. And it turned out that a trans activist complained. They found out where I lived because my details weren't hidden. You could find my name on Companies House, for instance. And they complained and said that my workplace was dangerous for trans people. And they said this on the basis that I had expressed views which were not in favour of trans ideology and the furtherance of trans rights. So one January afternoon, I got a knock on the office door, and it was a police officer from my former police force, a fellow called PC Gull from Humberside Police.
Homicide police?
Humberside police.
Humberside, okay, I thought you said homicide.
Humberside, oh, no, not homicide, Humberside police. And we spoke, and I said, look, have I committed a crime? And he said, no, you've not committed a crime. And I said, well, why are you here then? And he said these words, these exact words. He said, "I'm here to check your thinking. I'm here to check your thinking." I was like, wow. I said, let me just get this straight. I haven't committed a crime. No. You're not going to arrest me. No. But you're here to check my thinking. Yes. I said, have you any idea what that makes you? And he said, no. I said, I'll tell you now, 1984 is a dystopian novel. It's not a police how-to manual. And he had no idea. He had no idea that what I was talking about George Orwell. He had no idea that
he had never read it.
He'd never even heard of it. Never even heard of it. So we got into this conversation, and I said, "What is the basis of this? If I've not committed a crime?" And he said, well, if we don't have a word with you now, what will happen is that your behaviour will escalate from being non-criminal to being criminal. I said, okay.
And did he define what he meant with criminal?
He did. What he said was, or not what he said, but when we challenged the police about this in court, and what the police said and the government said was that if the police hadn't challenged me at this point, I would go on to start actively discriminating against trans people, talking and insulting trans people, physically attacking trans people, murdering trans people, and then, get this, leading a genocide against trans people. They literally said that. What they said was that I was on stage 1 of a 5-stage journey.
Ending with genocide.
Ending with genocide. And that without them speaking to me, I would continue that journey and become a genocidal maniac. I was heading to be trans Hitler. I was heading to set up a concentration camp, an Auschwitz of trans people, unless they came and nipped it in the bud before it became criminal. Now, I said, this is completely and utterly insane. This is not how we work in the UK. We don't have precog. We don't have precognition. We don't have thought crime. We don't predict what somebody is going to do in the future. We prosecute conspiracy, of course. If you are actively conspiring to commit a crime, of course we prosecute that. That's what we expect the police to do. But we don't follow this crazy idea.
It sounds almost like Minority Report by
exactly
Philip K. Dick.
Yes, it's exactly like Minority Report. Almost like they'd got a bunch of naked policewomen laying in a bath somewhere, plugged into the electricity, predicting what was going to happen in the future, and sending the precogs out, the police out to stop us. That's exactly what it was like. We argued that this was entirely illogical because, and the police said, well, we're following the national guidance. I'm right. Okay, so who sets the national guidance? Well, the government sets the national guidance through this organisation called the College of Policing. So he said, right, well, we'll attack the College of Police, we'll attack the guidance. So we'll attack the Chief Constable for following the guidance, and we'll attack the government for setting the guidance. And that's what we did. And the thing about the guidance, it was so illogical. What it said was that a non-crime hate incident is any incident that anybody perceives as being hostile to trans people. And then it says no evidence of hate is required. So you have a non-incident.
Does that go against the rule of law that evidence is required for a verdict?
Well, because it's outside of the law. You know, all it took was somebody to say, I perceive that what you said was against my community, the trans community, and my perception of what you said is more important than anything that you meant, any evidence at all, anything. My perception is all that matters. And the police use that as their standard. So there was no possibility of an appeal. You didn't go before a jury because you hadn't committed a crime. You'd committed an entirely different thing called a non-crime. So no judge, no jury, no right of appeal, no anything. And that was it. Now you'd think, well, so what? I'll tell you what, this is why it matters. We also discovered that once you had a non-crime hate incident recorded against your name, it stayed on your record for it stayed on your record for 7 years, and the chief constable could disclose it to any employer if you were looking at a job. He could let them know that you had committed a non-crime hate incident, that you were guilty of the offence of non-crime hate. And we said, this is not only crazy, but it's also dangerous. In fact, this is precisely the kind of behaviour that occurred with the Stasi behind the Iron Curtain in East Germany. In Berlin, this is what would happen. All it would take was somebody to accuse you of having counter-revolutionary Western sympathies, capitalist sympathies. If you were perceived by anybody as having that, then they may not throw you in jail, they may not charge you with anything, but there would be a mark against your name. And when you applied to get a job, you would do a great interview, you would think it was all going great, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, the opportunity to take that position would be withdrawn. And we said, it's exactly the same thing going on here. It's exactly the same. It is no different at all from what was going on behind the Berlin Wall in East Germany. Now, we won. Ultimately, we won. We went to the High Court and we won. And what was interesting is that the judge, the High Court judge, one of the things that he said is this. He said it should never be it should never be underestimated the chilling effect of a police officer turning up at your place of work to check your thinking. And then he said, we have never had a Stasi, a Checker or a Gestapo in this country. So he understood how serious this was. He understood that when the police behave like that, they are behaving not like the British Bobby, but they are behaving more in keeping with the Stasi, with the Checker, with the Gestapo. And that's why he ruled against them. And as a result of that, we knocked the whole guidance out. We beat the government and they had to provide new guidance. And the new guidance, it's not perfect.
It's better than the one you were exposed to.
But what it does require evidence. The old guidance required nothing other than perception. The new guidance requires evidence. So the burden is now on the police to justify why they are going to keep an eye on you. It can't simply be perception. And well, that's okay. You know, if you're, it's not perfect, but we can live with that. So that was sort of our first major victories back in 2019, 2020, and 2021. And that's really where I came to national attention. And that's why I've got this tattoo on my arm that says the wrong guy. And we have the head of the Free Speech Union, a guy called Toby Young, who's now a Lord, actually.
And we have interviewed him here at FrihetsNytt as well 2 years ago.
Yeah, so when I beat the police, he wrote a headline that said, the government picked on the wrong guy. And I thought, oh, I like that. So hence the tattoo, the wrong guy.
That's really great. That's actually a story that ended pretty well considering everything. But we'll move on to speak about the organization you founded called Fair Cup. But I'm just going to turn at least quickly to the Swedish audience here in Swedish. Precis som Harry har blivit utsatt för förföljelse av system så även vi på FrihetsNytt drabbas av att vi har fått bankkonton nedstängda. Det innebär bland annat att jag som sitter här samt vi andra som deltar i redaktionen inte kan få ut någon som helst lön. Och det innebär att vi jobbar ideellt och får förlita oss på privata medel, sparade medel. Och i mitt fall så kommer jag få kämpa på med det jag har. Men vill ni stötta mig ge mig hjälp i den här situationen så att jag inte behöver bekymra mig om mitt privatliv, så får ni jättegärna göra det genom en helt villkorslös gåva till mitt Swish-nummer 076 285 4712. Med er hjälp så kan vi slå systemet precis som Harry gjorde i Storbritannien. But let's move on then to speak about the organization Fair Cop that has caused quite some headlines in the United Kingdom quite recently. Could you please tell us about the idea to found it and what was the purpose of it?
So back in 2019, when I came to public attention, I had very few followers. I had maybe 900 followers or something like this, and very little interaction. And then suddenly, you know, I became headline news, and a lot of people wanted to support. So some people that I, you know, since become very good friends of mine, they had a meeting and said we should support Harry, and let's set up an organisation called Fair Cop. And they came up with the idea of Fair Cop because, one, to talk about a fair cop in England, it means, you know, if you grab a criminal, then you've got a fair cop. Yeah, so it's a saying. It's a fair cop gov. You know, if I'm a burglar and you're a police officer and you catch me in the act, then I go, it's a fair cop gov.
Yeah,
yeah. So
I guess it goes by the rules.
Yeah. That's that. But the other thing was that we believe that most police officers are fair people, fair cops. Most police officers are good, honest people who want to uphold the law, who want to catch bad guys, who want to keep people safe. They don't want to go around knocking on doors, checking people's thinking. That's not what they want. So we set up this organisation called Fair Cop, and now, you know, we have I think close on 80,000 followers now, and it's basically myself and a barrister, a lawyer called Sarah Phillimore. She's a family lawyer, and she's you know, you think I'm mean, she's mean. I mean, I'm hard, but she's harder. She is one tough cookie. So it's she and I, and then we have a number of very, very good lawyers that we work with, a number of very good barristers that we work with. My wife runs the Fair Cop Facebook page, and we have. If there's a news story about policing and free speech in particular, then the press will come to me, or, you know, Sarah or I, for commentary on it. So that's really what we are. We're a political pressure group whose focus is almost solely on police overreach, in terms of when they get involved in politics, we go against them, and when they come against individuals in matters relating to free speech, we support the individual against the police. So that's really what we are. But we're volunteers. Nobody gets paid. We don't even have a bank account. We just one way or another we get by.
Have you been refused a bank account, or have you just chosen not to apply for one?
Never applied for a bank account. No, never at all. I was probably wrong, in all honesty. In the beginning, I didn't want it to look like it was about money. I wanted for it to be solely about the principle. Now, I was probably wrong in that. I wish I had made it a little bit more about money, and I'll tell you why. Even when you win against the police, they cannot show sorrow. They don't have a heart. You know, they can say, "Oh, on this occasion we got it wrong," or they can say, "We are sorry for any inconvenience," or whatever.
If you felt inconvenient.
But they don't have a heart. They're a corporation. They don't have feelings. So how can they be sorry? It's very difficult for them. What they do have is a bank balance. What they do have is a budget. So if I was to have my time again, I would go after their budget. I would sue them because that's how they feel sorrow. That's how they feel sorrow. Now, very recently, maybe a year or so ago, a very famous journalist in the UK called Alison Pearson She had a knock on the door like mine because she'd written about unchecked immigration, about the boats. And she got a non-crime hate incident against her name, which of course has now been removed because of the work that we'd done previously. So it still goes on. But I said to her, she said, I don't want to go after their money, Harry. I don't need their money. And I said, no, you do, Alison. It's the only way they will feel sorrow. What you do with the money, give it away. If you don't want it, give it away. Give it to me. I don't care. Do what you want with it. Let's have a party. But you've got to go. You've got to go after their money because it's the nearest thing that they have to a heart is their bank balance. So that's the way they feel sorry. So I would encourage anybody who's been harassed like this by the police. An apology, great. Go for the money though. Make it count.
The reason you and I came into contact a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month or so, was because of the court case in Newcastle concerning the participation of the Northumbrian Police Department participating in Pride. It was about the political activism of the police force in the United Kingdom. And how is the political activism in general with the police, and how have you been taking a fight against that?
Okay, so the principle in the UK is that the police cannot be political. The police have to operate without fear, without favour. In particular, they can have no association at all with anything that could be perceived as being political. That's it. That is the standard. Now, over the years, that standard has gone into decline. So you find the police supporting groups on the basis that this was a group which in years past they persecuted. So the gay community, for instance, they say, well, we persecuted the gay community and therefore we want to show them that we are no longer persecuting them, so we're going to actively support them. That's a dodgy logic for a start. But that's the
So you go from one extreme to the other side.
So they go, well, look, we were on the wrong side of history in the 1960s and in the 1970s and 1980s. In the 1990s, we started to get neutral, but now we want to be on the right side of history. My argument is, no. It's not your job as the police to be on the right or the wrong side of history. It's your job as the police to be on the right side of the law. Getting the law on the right side of history is the job of politicians. It's the job of the demos, the people, to campaign for changes in the law. But if you're interested in campaigning for change, don't be a police officer, because it is incompatible with your role and the necessity for you to not only be neutral, but to appear to be neutral. And so when you are marching in Pride, when you are waving your banners that say trans rights are human rights, trans women are women, when you are advocating for the use of pronouns and saying pronouns are a human right, then clearly it's political. When you are marching in a march, as the Chief Constable of Northumbria did last year, where when Northern Pride said, they say, we are a political protest. You don't have to read between the lines. They tell you what they are. They are a political protest. The Chief Constable said, well, we know that's what they say, but we're just identifying with the celebration part of it. No, you can't pick and choose which bit you are associating with. So we threatened them with what's called a judicial review. That's taken them to the High Court. They ignored us. I went undercover, and I don't know whether I sent you the pictures of me dressed in a pink wig and with makeup on.
I haven't seen that.
I'll send them to you. And I was marching alongside the Chief Constable. She didn't know it was me. Marching alongside the Chief Constable with a sign that said, what did it say? no LGBT, no LGB without the T, and I had the I had the G decorated as a set of testicles with.
Oh God!
And I was walking alongside Chief Constable shouting at the top of my lungs, "No LGB without the T! Make transphobes afraid again!" And we got it all on tape. We got it all on video, and she didn't care. She didn't know it was me, but she knew what the message was. She didn't care. She supported the message, so I'll send you the photographs.
Make people afraid, even though they have opinions that you don't like.
Make them afraid again. Yeah, make them afraid again. Yeah. So we took them to court, and the judge was very quick. He normally at the High Court it takes 2 or 3 months for them to deliberate. He deliberated within a week, and he threw the book at the police, and subsequently, every police force in the country has now kicked out of Pride. Every single one. But it's not just the police. Any organisation at all that is supposed to be politically neutral cannot be in Pride anymore. Not just the police.
At least in Northumbria. Or is it the case in Britain?
Right across the country. Because it was a High Court ruling that said police participation in Pride is a violation of the obligation for neutrality. Once you've established that, it applies right across the UK. But it also applies to other organisations who claim to be politically neutral. So, for instance, the Premier League recently announced that it was getting rid of its its Rainbow Laces campaign. Why? Because we won that court case. The FA will be following suit, I think.
The Football Association.
Yes, because we have the Football Association under threat of judicial review over its treatment of Lindsay Smith, the Newcastle United fan, who we could talk about.
We have interviewed Lindsay Smith, who was also the spearhead woman behind the case against the Northumbrian police concerning the participation in Northern Pride. A really interesting interview, a really interesting person. I can really recommend watching the interview, but also following her on X as well, where she is posting a whole lot of interesting things and interesting opinions on what's happening. But if you look at the case you won, what would you say was the impact on your organization? Do you felt that the organization could make a change, that you could really fight the system like that?
Yeah, no, I do, because I believe in the rule of law. I'm an optimist, and I think that very often organizations slide away from where they're supposed to be, not because they're evil, but because they're misguided. That somehow they've taken the poison fruit from the tree of knowledge, and it's led them astray. Not that they wanted to be led astray necessarily, but they've done it, maybe for even good reasons. But nevertheless, once you stray away from your core principles, you're wrong. And my mission has been to point out you're wrong. It's as simple as that, and to get you back on the right track. But the trans rights issue was the issue which brought it to my attention. But then once you see that, then you start seeing it elsewhere. So, for instance, with the Black Lives Matter thing, you would find police officers taking the knee. Like, no, you can't do that. Black Lives Matter is also a political movement. Black Lives Matter is a Marxist movement. Black Lives Matter has a political campaign. You can't do anything that associates you with that campaign. What you can do, you can make sure that campaign is allowed to run without people harassing people. Everybody in a democracy, it doesn't matter what your view is, whether you're far left, far right, whether you're a communist, whether you're a Trotskyite, whether you're a conservative, liberal, whatever. You've got the right to present your case. You've got the right to meet with other people, to go on a march, to campaign, and it's the police's job to make sure that happens without you being in danger, without you being attacked, and to prevent you taking it to law and breaking the law. That's what happens in a healthy democracy. But you cannot do that if you have joined the organisation. or if you have adopted the language or the symbols of the organisation. If you look like you're supporting that organisation, then you can no longer police it. That's it. So we found it with the trans thing, we found it with Black Lives Matter. We found it with the very soft approach that the police have had towards the eco people, the green lobby.
The climate.
Yeah, the climate. So when a few years ago the climate activists were gluing themselves to major highways and preventing, causing all kinds of disruption, rather than picking them up and moving them, they were bringing them tea and coffee. They were bringing them juice and making sure they were okay. More recently, we've had the anti-asylum, the migration protests.
Yeah, about a year ago, or
no, continuing right now. The protests.
Oh, right, yeah,
outside
we spoke
the
about it earlier.
Yeah. And what we found yet again is the police are literally bussing in the left wing protesters, protecting the left wing protesters.
Yeah, we saw it in Epping, for example.
Exactly, and we go, this keeps happening. This keeps happening all the time. We can see that the police seem to be acting in one way toward one group and an entirely different way toward another group. They say, oh no, it's just operational. And we say, no, it's not just operational, because it happens the same way every single time, and we can predict how it's going to happen. We can predict that you will be very accommodating to this group and very aggressive toward this group. We can predict it. It happens over and over again. So once you can predict how the police are going to react on the basis of a group's politics, then you have a political police force. And that's what Fair Cop, that's what we try and do. We point it out and we try and stop it.
Yeah. Another case that became really, I would say, really clear was about exactly 1 year ago, during those riots following the stabbing, the murder in Southport, when the police had allowed, just a couple of weeks before that, migrants to run rampage in Leeds, I think it was, and stood with their arms crossed and backed away. But then when British were protesting against anti-white racism, against forced mass migration, they became really tough and went on really hard. And what did you do anything, or what was the stance concerning the two-tier police system that came into focus during those riots?
Well, it was. We talked about a two-tier policing system for many years. That if you imagine a pyramid, a hierarchy. If you were trans, you were at the top. If you were Muslim, you were almost at the top. If you were an eco-green climate activist, you were close to the top.
Or a non-European migrant.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was very clear that the police tiered their justice. But it was brought into sharp relief last summer, and it wasn't helped by the fact that we had a brand new Labour government and Keir Starmer was the Prime Minister. Now, Keir Starmer's background is as the chief prosecutor in the UK. He was the head of the Crown Prosecution Service, which is fine, which is absolutely fine. But the problem is when you professionally, you are a prosecutor, it is your job to not to reach out to the other side, but to defeat the other side. It's your job to make sure there are winners and losers, right and wrong.
The criminals ought to be the losers.
The good guys and the criminals. And this is what happened. He instantly decided that these were right-wing riots, which they weren't. He instantly decided that all of the people who were either rioting or showing sympathy to the riots or had any form of agreement with anything to do with the cause of the riots were criminals or potential criminals. And he instructed the police, he instructed the Crown Prosecution Service, he instructed judges to fast track people through the system, because he saw He saw them as an existential threat. And so we have the obscene situation where a woman called Lucy Connolly, a youngish mother, who, in the aftermath of the Southport stabbings, which were horrific, she went on Twitter, on X, and in a fit of anger said, burn down the migrant hotels. Not a nice thing to say, you know. None of us agree with that. But she went for a walk with her dog, came back 2 hours later and thought, that was silly of me to say that, and took it down. She deleted it. Nevertheless, she was arrested and put in prison for, I think, 31 months or something like that.
Nearly 4 years.
Just over 3 years, 36 months, yeah. Absolutely ridiculous. Now, this last week, at a similar time, a councillor in London was shown on video saying, slit the throats of our enemies. Slit their throats. Last week, he was found not guilty.
Was he an Islamist or Islamic?
Yes, he was an Islamist, yeah. He was found not guilty because that was simply him. It's him expressing his free speech in a clumsy way, and he didn't mean it. So Lucy Connolly is in jail because she said, yeah, I did say that. I shouldn't have said it. I took it down 2 hours later because I realised wrong. No, you're going to jail for 3 years. This guy slit our throats. Slit our throats. He went, no, it's free speech.
Did you argue the case with Lee Rigby in 2012, 2013, the soldier who was beheaded by two Islamists in, was it London that happened?
Yeah. Absolutely. So it's very real. Nobody is going round burning down hotels. They're not. But people are, as you rightly point out, going round and slicing people's heads off. They are doing that. So who is more dangerous? Lucy Connolly, who had 2 hours of madness, who simply shot her mouth off on Twitter and then thought better of it and took it down, or a person in power, a politician in power, who is encouraging other people to slit people's throats? Who is the more dangerous? Well, I'm telling you now, it's that politician.
Exactly.
And who's the one that's not in jail? Who's the one that's scot-free? Him.
Why? Who's still in position?
Yeah, because he has aligned himself with those who the government favours, the Islamists. That is fact. So this is how crazy it is that the Keir Starmer even tried to make it criminal to suggest that there was two-tier policing. Screw you. There is, and we have countless examples of it.
Yeah, I remember. I think that what was some sort of web page hotline to report hate speech or criminal acts on the web and everything, to focus on that instead of taking care of stabbings, murder, rapes, robbery.
One of the things that we discovered was that that in an area of England called Cheshire, the police had set up cafes. They'd gone to people's, cafes where you get fika and things like that.
Exactly, yeah.
And they were teaching staff how to recognise conversations which were transphobic or which were hateful. And one of the things that they were taught, if somebody looks at you in a funny way, that is a hate crime. Somebody looking at you. I look at you in a funny way, get on the blower, ring the police, a hate crime's taking place. Somebody looked at me funny. This is how crazy it's got, and this is why, I've been very busy for the last number of years now, trying to point this out, trying to find these issues, point them out, and then shame the police into changing their ways or threatening them with court or taking them to court. But it's a thankless task, I'll tell you now.
I can imagine. And we're about to wrap up this interview, but I think it will be on September the 13th in London. There will be a big free speech demonstration, manifestation. Will the Fair Cop participate in any way, or will you? What is your stance on the situation with the free speech and
We don't tend to go to any form of rally like that, and we do it because we like to try and set an example to the police. You know, we're asking the police not to align themselves with any group. So, as a matter of principle, we try not to do either. So we may go along and watch, we may go along and record, but we don't go along and actively participate. And we can say, this is what without fear or favour looks like. You know, we're here, or we're not there. We are, you know, we believe that these rallies should take place, but we're not going to actively be involved in any of them, because we want to show the police how to do it.
Yeah, you have to set a good example.
Yeah, I mean, it's wrong. It's wrong because we can align with anybody. We have no statutory obligation to do this. But I think we took the decision a long time ago that let's try and be an example to the police, which is why I will go on podcasts of people that I don't agree with, because I go, no, that's what operating without fear or favour looks like. Is the podcaster operating within the law? Well, if they are, that's good. And do I quite like them? If I don't like somebody, I'll just go, well, it's not because you're left wing or right wing, or it's just I just don't like you. I'm just not going on because I don't like you, which is fine. But I try not to make a distinction. So, you know, I got into a bit of trouble for going on Tommy Robinson's podcast a while ago, and but I go, no, this is what without fear or favour looks like. I'm not gonna pick or choose. If I think you've got a good audience, if I think, you know, I get on with you personally, or you interest me, or what have you, I'll go on. If I find you boring or obnoxious, then I'm not going to do it. Whichever side you are, you know, if I just don't like you, I'm not coming on. I'm not coming on your podcast.
That sentiment is really the foundation of a healthy and working democracy, the ability to speak with other people, no matter their opinions. If they are being idiots, that's because they're idiots, not because of politics or religion or ethnicity or anything.
And I don't have to like everybody. If I just like, we've got people who are ostensibly, you know, will probably agree with me on a lot of things, and I just like, I'm not getting on your podcast because you're a dickhead. I just don't like you. I think you're just too extreme. I just don't like you. You don't gel with me. I'm not interested. But that's the ability to make a choice, isn't it? But I'm not going to go on. I'm not going to say no because I'm afraid that people aren't going to like it. Never. I'm going to go on.
That's the kind of sentiment, the kind of people we really need, Harry. Thank you very much for coming here to Sweden and participating in this interview. I hope we'll get to see you here again at some point.
Oh yeah, I'm sure you will.
You're coming to Sweden now and again, and hopefully I'll be able to come to Britain as well and do an interview out in place there. So thank you very much again, Harry, for this lovely interview. And thank you very much for watching this interview. Remember to follow us on FrihetsNytt.se. It will probably be mostly Swedish speakers who follow us there, because it's mostly in Swedish. But if you want to learn Swedish and you want to follow what's happening in Sweden, that's a perfect opportunity to start following us. So thank you very much, and I'll see you again pretty soon.